Hello everybody, so I'm George from Ireland. Welcome back to my channel. So this video is about Fergie, as she's known, Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, the ex-wife of Prince Andrew. He whose name must not be mentioned, the person the British royal family really wishes would be forgotten. Now, he's keeping his head below the parapet, but his ex-wife is not. And incidentally, they're the most in-love pair of divorcees ever. The 62-year-old Fergie gave an interview to a French publication called Madame Figaro. So this was sort of unwittingly hilarious by her, someone who really lacks self-awareness. So her father was an army officer in the days when army officers were all pucker. He was later manager of Prince Charles's polo team. And then her mother walked out on them when Fergie was a teenager, out on Fergie and her sister and her dad, because she had taken herself up in the arms of an Argentine polo player much younger than her, and she shifted to Argentina, a scandal which rocked the equestrian world. But like mother, like daughter. Her father later remarried and had 3 younger children, so Fergie and her sister felt rather neglected, sort of spare parts. So she left school, I think, without any qualifications. She moved to London, and then she lived with a couple of boyfriends, not at the same time, consecutively, in the late 70s, when that was highly contentious, certainly if you're upper class like she was. But anyway, in this interview, Fergie says she's the most persecuted woman in the history of the royal family. Now, I knew Fergie was ignorant, but this really takes the biscuit. Has she heard of Anne Boleyn, who was accused of committing adultery with just about everyone, including her own brother, accused of being a witch, executed, or Catherine Howard, who was executed while still a teenager because she was forced to marry to this obese, hideous tyrant called Henry VIII. Maybe she's heard of Mary, Queen of Scots, who was obviously related to the English royal family too, and on and on. Or, Queen Matilda, there was a war fought against her for 19 years to prevent her taking over the throne, because she's a woman, despite the barons all having sworn fealty to her before her father's death. There are numerous examples of people in the royal family alone who had it much harder. Princess Diana, many people thought that Princess Diana was hounded to her death. So Fergie, in about 1986, she married Prince Andrew, who's a year younger than her, and it was contentious that she wore a white dress at her wedding. Fergie, as they say, it showed that she had a wicked sense of humour, so her maidenhood was questionable, to say the least. Not that I care, come on. 99% of brides are not virgins at their wedding days, nowadays. Anyway, so she said that she's a reed that just won't break. So she has fought the corner of her ex-husband, Prince Andrew, and they still have a very cordial relationship. For years, newspapers saying they're getting back together, but this never quite happened. Or one of Prince Andrew's alibis about this sort of Epstein-gate, Ghislaine Maxwell allegations that he had intercourse with Virginia Roberts when she wasn't quite consenting, is that no, he must have been at home with his daughters, had rule, either him or his ex-wife were always at home with his teenage daughters, although apparently that's not true. So Fergie, she is vociferously standing up for her ex-husband, Prince Andrew, the Duke of York. She's now a grandmother, this Fergie. So this is probably the last thing that the royal family needs. I mean, the Queen needs this like a hole in the head. A reminder of this scandal-struck scoundrel, Fergie. And she got along very well with her balding Texan financial advisor, John Bryan. And in 1992, she was photographed sunbathing topless at a villa in France. A bit controversial for a princess, particularly in those days. And who was beside her? Not her husband, he was in another country. It was her financial advisor, which was morally iffy at the time. To be alone in the company of another man for a prolonged period when her husband wasn't around, Caesar's wife should be above suspicion, but also getting her norks out. And worse, then he was kissing her toes. So he had to go from toe job to no job, the abominable toe man, they called him. And their marriage broke down. It was clear that she was committing adultery, possibly her husband was. And they got divorced. So that was the first royal divorce. Well, not the first, sorry, in that generation. Actually, Prince Andrew got married earlier on. But she had started it. So that's her. She's got millions of pounds into debt and described her ex-husband as a knight in shining armour who used to bail her out financially. She was £5 million in debt to Coutts and things like that. And so there were loads of other scandals. And then one time when she was half cut, she was interviewed in the back of a taxi. It was an expose, a sting by the fake Sheikh Mazda Mahmoud, when she was saying, she could get access to her ex-husband and things like that for a certain amount of hard cash. And then there was another hilarious thing. There was this company called English Mentors years ago, run by Nigel Hayden Payton, and what's that other company? Supposedly Pucker tutoring company, Bonus McFarlane, and giving courses about how to be an English gentleman or English lady, mostly to Russian oligarchs. And she said, well, if you sign your child up to the English Mentors, you will have made a real investment in your child's future. It's increasingly competitive to get a job, like she would know, like she'd ever had a job. So another example of class blindness. Hilarious. What wisdom could we get from a woman as unwise as her? And she was actually a governor of her elder daughter's school. Princess Beatrice went to St George's, Ascot, where I taught actually when she was there. And what her educational qualifications are, I think her claim to be a pedagogue would be slight, to say the least. But I think it was just because of her royal handle, because of her Royal Highness, although that might have actually been taken off her when she got divorced. But so what? In the minds of the public, she's still royalty, the Duchess of York. So if you need Fergie to ride to the rescue, well, you're really in trouble. Anyway, that's it. So I suppose she's speaking up for her husband, ex-husband, because he's the one with the money. Anyway, so it would just be very welcome if she just shut up. Why is she giving this interview? Presumably for money, because she spends it like a sailor. She lives on Eaton Square in London. I don't know which actual house. After she got divorced, she told the press that she'd had an AIDS test, sort of being responsible to encourage people to do so. But some people say, well, that shows that she was sexually active after her divorce. The Queen must be crimson with embarrassment because, that's just not the done thing, even if she is. On the other hand, maybe Fergie really was being responsible in encouraging people to take that action. So that is enough about Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, the Duchess of Pork, as she was known. Sometimes she was quite chubby. Talked about her battles with weight. There are a number of books she's written. They must have been ghosted for her. She's not known for her literary abilities. She wrote these children's stories which were perfectly harmless. I think it might have sold slightly better when you had the prenomials HRH to promote her tome. So that's what earthly good she's done. I mean, in her 62 years of life, I think she's not a single call upon the nation's gratitude. So how entitled she is, literally. It was quite funny to see one of the male stars from Friends saying to her on camera, "So I hear you're single now," as though he wanted to date her. That's enough about Fergie. Toodaloo.